Welcome back, viewers. You're watching the Savera and I'm Shefali. President Donald Trump celebrated America's Liberation Day on April 2nd by announcing reciprocal tariffs on all major trading partners, including India. The United States run an overall trade deficit, the difference between the value of US exports and US imports, of around $1.2 trillion. The president believes the situation requires a fundamental reset. Trump's announcement. Two sets of tariffs were introduced. One, a base tariff of 10% against all countries, a sharp increase from the earlier tariff rate of around 2.5%. This base rate of tariffs will go in effect on April 5. Number 2, country-specific tariffs that were arrived by estimating how much each of these countries charges on US goods and having it to reach USA discounted reciprocal tariffs. This, Trump said, was because Americans were kind. The country-specific tariffs will be enforced from April 9th onwards. Now, how kind or reasonable? The table lists the main countries against which the US announced reciprocal tariffs, in descending order of the tariffs imposed. Cambodia, with a per capita income of $2,950, a little more in India's, and accounting for just 1% of the overall US trade deficit, has been hit with the highest level of tariffs. Bangladesh, with an even lower capita income and accounting for 0.5% of the overall US trade deficit, has been hit with 37% tariffs. In contrast, China, with a much higher per capita income and accounting for almost 25% of the total US deficit, and the EU, with an even higher per capita income and accounting for almost 20% of the US trade deficit, has been hit with 30% and 20% tariff respectively. Indeed, in the list of countries' regions shared by Trump while announcing the tariffs, only 3, China, EU and Vietnam, contributed to 10% or more of the US trade deficit. And only 2 countries on the list, Switzerland and Singapore, are richer than the US in per capita income terms. Even countries with whom the US enjoys a trade surplus, that is, it exports more than it imports from them, have not been spared. These countries include the UK, Brazil, Singapore and Colombia. Now, Trump's view on India. India has been hit with a tariff rate of 27%. Trump released a report of the US Trade Department giving details of why each country was being tariffed. The report attacks India's increasingly protectionist stance from 2014 onwards and criticizes New Delhi's domestic policy choices and the regulatory environment in the country. Some key statements about India. India's World Trade Organization bound tariff rates on agricultural products are among the highest in the world, averaging 113.1% and ranging as high as 300%. Given the large disparity between WTO-bound and applied rates, India has considerable flexibility to change tariff rates for both agriculture and non-agricultural products at any time, creating tremendous uncertainty for US workers, farmers, ranchers and exporters. India took advantage of this tariff flexibility in the 2019-2020 budget by increasing tariffs without any notice or public consultation process of approximately 70 product categories. In its 2020 and 2021 budget, India raised tariffs for 31 product categories, including solar inverters and solar lanterns. In its 2021-22 budget, raised tariff rates on imported headphones, loudspeakers and smart meters used by power distributed companies. Starting in 2014, India has repeatedly applied tariffs on certain telecommunication equipments. Now, India's tariff rates are announced with the annual budget and are modified on an ad hoc basis through notifications in the Gazette of India without opportunity for comment. India lacks an overarching government procurement policy, and practices and procedures vary among different ministers within the central government. India's overall IP, intellectual property, enforcement remains adequate. India imposes certain restrictions on foreign direct investment in the retail industry. India's banking system is dominated by state-owned banks, which account for approximately 60% of total market share and 67% of all India branches. Most privately owned banks are Indian-owned, with foreign banks constituting less than 0.6% of the total bank branches in India. There is an unlevel playing field in the insurance market. State-owned companies are not subject to the same law and prudent supervision as private firms and enjoy various guarantees from the government. India provides a broad range of subsidies and support to its agriculture sector, including credit subsidies, debt waivers, crop insurance, and subsidies for inputs such as fertilizers, fuels, electricities, and seed at both central and state level. These subsidies lower the cost of production for India's producers and have the potential to distort the market in which imported products compete. India has conducted a number of collapsed shutdowns of the internet in recent years, restrict access to information and services, disrupting commercial operations, undermining a free and open internet, and impeding trade in the digital economy. A lack of transparency continues to affect new and proposed laws and regulations, as well as lack of uniform notice and comment procedures and instant notifications of those measures to WTO. The broader takeaway. Now, Trump's waves of protectionism is worse than the one the US witnessed during the Greater Depression of 1930s. The so-called Smooth Hallway Act that then raised import tariffs in the US in a bid to save the domestic industries and farmers. But it only worsens and deepens the economic repression. An economic depression is worse than a recession, both in terms and its severity. The contraction of economic output and rise in unemployment, as well as its scale, often lasting years instead of months. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bennett said that if the terrified countries do not panic, then these tariffs will be the cap of how high they can go. In other words, if countries relate, the US raise the tariff walls higher, since it is in any case doing a reciprocal logic. Besant's comment can also mean that US is now open to negotiations, and that if the leader of these countries rush to US promising to bring down their own tariff, then the US may bring down the newly announced tariffs. For instance, in India's case, to get a reprieve on tariff, India's leadership may have to reform its protectionist policies out of compulsion. That was all for now. For more details on this story, download the Savera app, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.